has now been around for 3 seasons, and coaches everywhere are saving time and being more efficient when it comes to scout cards. Coach Robinson from Texas says, "The thing I most enjoy is the ease of access to all the scout cards and how I can draw on them if I need to make any changes. Every coach that uses it says that it is so great to use. If you and your staff are tired of the old ways of preparing and using scout cards, check out thecoachpad.com to start enjoying Scout Team and making the 2023 season better than ever."
Welcome back to another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast. We have a returning guest here. He is the head coach entering his second year at Friends University. Coach Terry Harrison. Coach, how you doing?
Man, doing great. We were talking earlier. Our guys are coming back to campus today and tomorrow. So, absence makes the heart grow fonder. We ain't seen these kids since before Christmas break. So getting them back is, I don't know, it's fun. It's exciting. And, team meeting starting here at the end of this week and getting ready for off-season strength conditioning. So, it's exciting time, especially after, a really fun fall we had. So, doing great.
So we'll get to that strength stuff here in a second, because that's one of the topics I wanted to hit on. But let's talk about your 2022 season, because you guys, most wins, I think, in like 6 or 7 years or whatever the stat is. Top in rushing. You want to talk about how 2022 went for you guys taking over Friends from your prior school?
Yeah, it was a great year. We were very proud of it. It was it was fun. It's one of those deals, when you ask for a challenge, sometimes you get that. And that's what our fall was like. So we ended up 4-7, which was the winningest season since 2017 here at Fringe University. Coming off, we were previously at Bethel College, coming off back-to-back conference championships. So it's a little bit, as the head coach, the hardest part to manage was having, the most success Fringe has had in 4 or 5 years here, and then managing our own expectations of coming off back-to-back conference championship seasons and all that good stuff. And so that was a very interesting thing, to balance as the head coach when you're looking at that, right? And trying to remind ourselves of, just the progress we made over the course of the season. Played a lot of young guys, got a lot of experience. And so that was kind of the fall. I think we were number 1 rush team in the country again, and we take great pride in that. And, winning those 4 games. And even more than that, we were in 3. We how it is. You could have, should have, would have won. We went down to the wire against Bethel, our previous team. Had a shot. We had the ball, with like 2 minutes left, driving down the field with a chance to win, and just came up short. Same thing against the 3-way conference championship. All 3 of those teams, Southwestern, Bethel, and Avila, we had the ball on the last possession with a chance to tie or win. And so that's how close we came, to being even better. And, we were competing, going toe to toe with the best teams in the conference. So coming from the rough history at Friends University, that was moral victories aren't how it is. You get tired of that sometimes, but that's a huge statement to how hard our kids work, the great job our staff did. And so, I think it points to, championship football in the future here. If that means next year, that's awesome. And if not, you can definitely see it coming, as far as how we played in the fall. So it was a great fall.
Now you also mentioned your weight room before we hit that question. And we talked last time about how you bought in the Feed the Cats program at your prior school. And like when I was scheduling this, I saw your strength staff tweeted out. I think they either talked to Tony Holler, or they tweeted something out regarding Feed the Cats. And so I'm going to assume that your strength staff is fully bought into that belief, and that's going. And has any of that, how has that approach been for not only your student athletes, but your new strength staff there at Friends?
Well, it's been really easy. So, first of all, we have a phenomenal strength staff. Coach Belden is our head strength coach. Actually, he was a high school coach in Wichita, so we knew each other as high school coaches. And he's unquestionably the most knowledgeable guy that in the Wichita area as far as strength conditioning. So we're very lucky to have him here. Previously at Bethel, I had to do all the strength myself, so I was doing everything, right? And so it was one of the benefits of being at Friends University is you have a full-time strength coach who can develop you, right? But it is a little bit of a different idea to go to this idea of Feed the Cats, which is weird because it's not a program. Feed the Cats is not it's not like, hey, like 5-3-1 or bigger, faster, stronger. It's not a program. It's just more of a philosophy, right? And so anytime you have 2 people trying to marry that is a thing. So what's kind of funny is I kind of feel like I'm the one that needs to do better as far as implementing that in our new program. And obviously in the spring, we are moving forward. what's very cool has been awesome. So me and Coach Belton and Tony Holler met. We did a Zoom just the other day, and just, Tony was introducing some thoughts and ideas to Joe, so that we could all kind of, instead of having a middleman, piece this thing together. But what's crazy is, so Coach Belton, he's really close friends with Cal Dietz, who's at the University of Minnesota, and Chris Corpus, who's a big RPR guy. We had an RPR certification on our campus. We've had, in Cal Dietz, Minnesota. So anyway, all these guys that are connected to Tony and then go around and speak with him have already been on our campus. And so we have some mutual friends, right? Yeah. And so then what we were able to do with Joe was he was able to directly talk to Tony and kind of talk about what it could look like for us here. And so, yeah, we are all in. And what we need to do better this spring is, number one, be very stubborn about record, rank, publish, right? Because that takes some discipline, and that's hard to do, right? And we get busy. You don't want to do that. And so that's our big deal moving forward, right? Is to make sure prioritize speed over lifting or strength development, because it's all one and the same, right? And so anybody who follows that understands. And so that's our big deal this spring is we're going to go. We're doubling down on it, and we, as a football staff, we have to do a better job of supporting our strength staff, because when you have 100 kids, 120 kids, managing that in the weight room, you just can't do that alone, right? And so Coach Belton and his GAs are phenomenal, and so we're working on how we're going to divvy that up, and most likely it will be the speed training side will be on our football staff to go out. Coach Belton will do the program, but we'll go out and we'll do the recording, and we'll make sure our guys are getting their times in, and we'll make sure get that put under our spreadsheets. And then the strength side will be then when the strength staff takes over and does the strength development. So if we do that, man, we love that it will kind of fit that model that Tony's created. And so that, and then obviously, like anything, I think part of Feed the Cats is the idea of having fun with kids and not, not hurting kids, right? And first priority is do no harm, right? And so that's which we've always been that way. And it already jives. Our practice schedule is already, in the season, we already use a Feed the Cats practice schedule and practice approach. So quite honestly, it's just more than anything is on my side is being disciplined enough to make sure we are, recording and publishing and ranking our guys on the speed side.
Okay. Now, you are entering year 2. So you've had not a full year, but close to a full year at Friends. And obviously and I've had this talk with some high school coaches that have left really good programs and taken jobs that have historically struggled or that are not where it needs to be. And they talk about how they come in, try to do all the same things, and it's not necessarily the same. And is there anything you kind of learned or that you wanted to change from year 1 to year 2? Like, obviously you're familiar, like last time we talked, you're familiar with Friends, you're familiar with the area, but is there anything that you're like, okay, this didn't work, or this is not the right fit for here as you approach and evaluate things going into year 2?
Man, that right there is a phenomenal question. And in my opinion, what separates good coaches from great coaches, because you're exactly right. Friends is not Bethel. Bethel's not Wichita Heights High School, like that. In all the places I've been, and so it's a different puzzle. So in my opinion, what makes a great coach is someone who can put together different puzzles and still have success. And so it's cool that you asked that, because that's what we have been talking about as a staff. We essentially approached it the exact same as Bethel coming in the spring, just knowing that, hey, we have a proven system and a plan. Let's do this, how we do everything. And then after the fall, we were able to, we've been able to sit down like, man, is this best? Is this not? And so, it's pretty interesting you asked that. And so we've talked about a lot of things. We go over everything from, is the defensive schemes we're doing the best? Does it give us the best chance to win a championship? Football offensively, special teams, weight room stuff, right? And that's kind of how talking about getting with Tony and connecting with the strength staff, that came from, man, we just need to do a better job of developing our guys. And so that's been some things we've done. I will tell you, this is the best part of the attraction of Friends was recruiting and being here in Wichita. And unless you come and visit all these campuses, it's hard to explain until you see it. And then everybody be like, oh yeah, it makes sense. I would be at Friends too. But yeah, so recruiting went phenomenally well. And so what we are approaching right now is this idea of the biggest thing has been, so at our previous school, we didn't have any kid with a paid internship. We're just in a smaller town, a lot of these small colleges that are in rural towns on the Division III, NAI, and Division II level, kids aren't having jobs. There's not even access to jobs or paid internships. Our biggest hurdle, and it's going to sound like that cliche, like turn a negative into a positive, but our biggest hurdle here is that our kids have so many paid internships. So our business majors, we had 14 paid internships, and they're going out in the community. They're getting paid while they're in college, while they're still on scholarship for football, and they're having these internships, which are leading to full-time jobs. And so managing our schedule where kids have that opportunity, because we don't have them, like you hear about kids go to college, well, that coach owns you. Well, that's not true, number one, but it's definitely not true for us. And so we do have to manage our program in a way that allows for kids to have access to these outside opportunities here in Wichita. And we're right in the middle of downtown. And so that's been probably our biggest hurdle that we probably had to make the most adjustments, which I don't even know if it means we change what we do necessarily, just being aware that, and these kids, there's opportunities outside of campus here that just don't exist anywhere else in our conference, because everywhere else is in these smaller towns. And so that was a hurdle early on where I just, I just struggled like scheduling some things, because I was like, what do you mean you have this or that? And part of it was we just have to do better. We have to plan way further ahead so that kids can make plans, because we work championship hours and we put in championship time here, and we have to do it around all those outside opportunities.
Yeah, no, I get it, Coach. Now, let's be honest. I think even Deion Sanders said the other day, 95% of his kids will not play in the league. Yeah. 5%. So you need to figure out what are the other 95% going to do. When you're talking NAIA, D2, D3, you're probably talking 99% of your kids aren't going or even getting a tryout. So you got to give them opportunities. And when you have a good business department, that's a good thing. I had a kid who I had coached, who really the reason he decided between the two NIAs he offered is one has a really good business program and internship program. That stuff matters. But continuing from that, also continue with that year one, year two. Is there any I'm just curious, is there any hiccups? Because you guys are very good at running the flexbone. You rushed for over 3,000 yards this year. Was there any hiccups here that you didn't have at your prior stop running the flexbone, or anywhere else that you've been? Is there anything you're like, oh, or does that change your methodology, change? And like I said, there might be no, because you guys, you have a really good staff that knows it, but I was just curious, do you have anything that was kind of hiccups or you didn't foresee as you kind of brought the flexbone to friends?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's weird. I'm a little different than a lot of people. We've won so much, at the high school level, won a bunch. And then, at Bethel, it's kind of like here when we came to Friends, our kids were like, let's go. We just want to win, whatever that means, So there wasn't necessarily an issue with buying into a different scheme, because it is different. That's just what it is, right? And unfortunately, some people get offended by that, but it is different. And so that wasn't really a hurdle necessarily, but it is unique, And I think the coolest part for us is when we get on the field and practice, the biggest feedback we get from our players is that, number one, I get reps every day at practice, and I used to never get reps for the previous staff. And practice is fun. And so that's what I think sometimes when people watch games on Saturdays and they boil football down to simply flexbone versus spread, I think that's what people lose sight in. Is like, well, what are their kids' week like? What are their kids' days like? And the question becomes, it doesn't matter. Well, it doesn't even matter what scheme you run. It's, are you getting your kids reps at practice? So the really cool part is when we recruit kids and they choose to come here, and we can 100% tell that high school coach, like, look, your kid is going to get reps every day at practice. He's going to get developed. Because what do you hear as you're a high school kid and you're getting recruited to play college football? You hear, well, you're going to go be a practice dummy for a couple of years. And that's just not the case for us. And that is true in other places, by the way. But we've worked really hard to develop a practice schedule where that's not the case. And so the biggest feedback we get is that, or, hey, I thought it was going to be this coach and it wasn't. It was way more fun. And, I felt like I got better. And, they had confidence going into a Saturday because they knew their job, knew their rules, or whatever that is. And so, we wish we could have been better than 4-7. But like I told you, we went toe to toe with the 3 conference champions, co-conference champions. When you do that, your kids see like, oh man, look how close we are to being really good, right? And so that's how a program kind of builds over time. And so, that was the biggest, I don't know if hurdle's the word, but the cool part is when you watch film and kids know the rules and they understand the scheme, they can self-diagnose problems. And what we don't have, and no team I've really never been on a team or coached a team that had issues with blaming, like, hey, defense or offense. Our kids understand our scheme so well they can watch film and know, like, hey, man, that was me. It wasn't, hey, that wasn't a bad play call, or this is a stupid offense. They can look and say, like, yeah, I missed that block, or hey, that was a misread, or blah, blah, blah. They can point their own problems, and then that gives them something to work towards, right? And to take ownership of. And that's the challenge, right? No matter what scheme you run, that's the challenge. Can your kids know it so well and understand the nuances of your offense or defense so well that in the middle of a game, or when reviewing a game, they can point at, hey, this is what I can do better to give us a better chance to win. And so I think that's what people are most surprised with. And, our post games, when we're doing, people see us after the games, we're not, win or lose. I walk around, we call it, when we say BTF, we're talking about being big, tough Falcons. And after games, we walk around like a big, tough Falcon, and win or lose. And, we own that, and we just work to get better the next day. And that's kind of, we always put the sun comes up, or that's what I always tweet out. Hey, the sun came up, after a tough loss, because, in the end, it's never good enough, right? And you look at teams win championships, conference championships or national championships. In the end, you got to get back to work the next day, and you're always going to, keep pushing forward. And that's kind of what we built our program on. And, I think the way we practice, even more so than the schemes we run, kind of ties into that really well.
Okay. Now, I mean, I know I double checked our notes from last time, and I don't believe I asked you. I mean, of the flexbone plays, which one of them? And I should have asked you because I asked every run and shoot and flexbone guy this question, anyways. What is your favorite flexbone play? Like, does it have to be like the one you call the most, like the one you actually like genuinely enjoy?
Yeah. Well, that play action pass is my favorite. I love it. And so everybody laughs at that. I think I was asked that a couple of years ago on a deal. I love play action pass. We've won so many games off big play action passes, and people lose sight of how explosive those plays are, right? And so I know at our previous school there was some. I don't have many pictures up. I have a wall of fame in my garage. I have a big squat rack, and I put pictures up of some moments in my career, and I think 3 of them are pictures of guys catching play action passes that were game changers for us. And so that's what I love, because it's so fun, because you've been pounding it down somebody's throat and running the ball, and then all of a sudden, boom, you pop a big play action pass, and the sideline kind of goes nuts, and you can hear people in the bleachers going crazy. And so that's always the fun. You can see the D coordinator throw his headset down, like, my goodness, and so anyway, that's my favorite, because I think it's fun and exciting, and we work really hard at taking advantage of the space in the passing game. So that's what I would say is my favorite. Like you mentioned, I don't know if we run it the most. We probably throw more than any other flexbone school in the country, but definitely not, relatively, we're going to run the ball more for sure.
Well, let's build off that. Like, so what is your methodology of carrying those from game to game? How many play action passes do you try to carry, just on average? Like I said, I know it's not a perfect science. And then what is your methodology on calling it? Because obviously you want them sucked in the run to call it, but everybody's looking for different things. So how does that approach work for play action passing and kind of your offense? I know you mentioned some of the R4 stuff last time that we talked, but how do you approach play action passing, and what you do from week to week?
Yeah, that's we have a set. We have, I forget how many schemes we carry, but in the 7-ish range of different type of schemes that have the rhythm read, blah, blah, all the R4 stuff, right? But that's the interesting part. It really is. I think there's when you're a run the ball first pro team, there's definitely it's a feel thing, in my opinion, and getting a feel for when is the right time, how's this player playing, because it's not just a coverage issue. It's a how aggressive is that particular kid, right? And so then it becomes a personnel, like which safety can you take advantage of, which corner has dirty eyes, and that's how we kind of approach it. And we have guys assigned to that, watching guys on the field, like, hey, it might be time, or hey, this space, they're giving us this space type of deal. And then we always lean on our players a lot. That was what we actually have a kid who played receivers for us. His name was Tanner Galliard at Bethel, but he was number 8 for people that watched us then. Big, good receiver who had a bunch of touchdown catches. He was really good about that as a player, man. He'd come off and be like, Coach, he's got dirty eyes, like it might be time, and never in a way of wanting the ball, just in a way he wanted to win, and he was a warrior. And so it'd be cool to have him mentor some of our guys on what that's like, and how to use body language, and all the stuff you do in the run game to then take advantage and throw a pass and kind of be a little more deceptive. So that's it's not the best answer, but it is, man. Guys start stacking the box, and you absolutely have to be able to complete a pass. Yes. I mean, you have to. Like, that's what's I'm not knocking anyone, but you watch some games and it's like, some of the years the Army Navy game, it's like they refuse to throw the ball, and it's not knocking those guys; those are great coaches, but you're crazy not to learn from that. Sometimes the people in the stands are right when it's like might be time to throw it. So
Yeah, I
not
get
the
it.
best answer, but it's real.
No, it's true, and like it's. I mean, again, some of it is you're listening to your players, some is you're listening to your coaches. Like it kind of, and to your point, it's also a feel thing. Like it's also what you're seeing, and it kind of varies on. And we've talked. You don't know necessarily what front you're going to see week to week.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you probably have a little bit of an idea because you've played enough of these teams.
Yeah.
I'll ask you that question because while I was on it, how did I mean? It's the same league, just different school. Did any of
Right.
the schools play you differently now that you were friends? Did you see any new approaches, or did everybody just say, "Hey, we're just gonna, hey, same coach, same scheme, we're just gonna
Yeah.
play the same"?
Most of them, it was different. We got a lot of this year. My understanding is there was a big powwow in our conference, and they all talked about defending the flexbone. And so the people that attended that powwow gave us the same front. You know what I mean? So they better not do that next year. I'll leave it at that. But anyway, yeah. So there was some similar fronts, and that we got, and some teams did a few different things. But I mean, in the end, you can only run so many fronts. A lot of bear front, which is fine. I mean, no one ran a front. We didn't ever come back on a Sunday and be like, oh man, they got us. It was an execution deal, which is what we get ready. We just didn't, or maybe weren't fast enough at a position, or maybe we misread something. We didn't come in on any Sunday and be like, oh, they got us and they got that defense. They have the flexbone defense. The defense doesn't exist. It really comes down to execution. And so the games we struggled, we just out executed or outmanned. Especially early. We had one game, we won our first game, and then we got beat up pretty good the second game. And that was more of a tribute. We just weren't ready for that success yet. We went down and had that great offseason and went and beat a non-conference opponent in Oklahoma and Panhandle State that probably no one thought we had a chance to win. So that was a great way to start the year. But it was also a little bit like, oh, like here we go, we've arrived, type of deal. So we had to fight that. Handling success sometimes is just as hard as handling adversity, maybe even harder. And so, yeah, that's what we got, though. But different fronts, 2 years ago, everybody ran like a 5-1-5 or a 3 safety odd stack type of deal. Yeah. That's what everybody ran every week. And I think people got tired of that because we were scoring a lot of points. And then, now it's a lot of 4-3 and a lot of 50, is pretty much what we're getting, and different variations of that. So, again, it's not groundbreaking stuff. It's fine. It's just nothing that's confusing by any means. It just comes down to an execution deal for us.
Now, obviously, did that with them all running essentially the same defense after their little powwow, did that, once you kind of saw that writing at the wall, maybe after 2 games, did that make that game planning wise or practice wise easier for you?
I mean, yes and no. It just gives you a little bit of hinkling like, hey, maybe we better do a little more of this because we're going to get the same thing. The hard part is what we do. We try to prepare for every front every day to where we never get confused. Yeah. The hardest part is to fight that urge when you know what you're going to get, but we still practice every front, and so, that's the hardest part. And so, there's no one tricked us. I'll just leave it at that. No one tricked us. No one did anything special. There's not a flexbone defense, just like there's not a spread defense, just like there's not an air raid defense or a zone defense. There's just not. We were out executed at times, and the games that we struggled were us issues, personnel issues, not scheme issues. And so the cool part is it gives us something to fix, right? And our kids did a really good job. Of fixing that, and that's why we had a shot to beat the three teams that we had the ball to win the last possession of every game against the 3-way conference champion. So, I think our kids did great with that. So, we need to, like you talked about, we just got to develop our guys, and that's fine. We were really young, played a lot of young cats, and that will pay off over time. And the hardest part, probably, if I'm being very honest, was we were at year 1 running the flexbone at Friends with our kids, and the defensive coordinators were year 5 defending it. So they might have been a little ahead of the curve, because our kids were in their first year running, but everybody else had been defending us at Bethel for 5 years. So there might have been something to that. There's so much turnover in coaching staffs and players now in college football. I don't know if I buy into that as much as, other people might. So
I get it. Now, I do want to ask you because I'm assuming you run midline, and that's my personal favorite of them. And I wanted to ask you how one, how do you approach installing midline, and then two, is there any like little tips or anything for somebody installing midline that people might miss?
Mid double or mid triple or both?
Start with mid double, and then we'll see if we have
Uh,
time. We'll go mid triple.
Mid double, that's been harder in high school. Man, we used to light people up running midline double. I mean, it was probably one of our top explosive plays. The hardest part, we have to work really hard on our tackle and not getting B gap really, really condensed down. People, that DN bench pressing, you're tackling the B back. That's been our biggest issue on the college level. And some of that's been compounded by when we play even fronts, when we're really thinking a lot of mid double. It's been harder against even fronts because some teams that have struggled to defend us, they just pinch their DNs the whole game. So they're not teaching their kids how to defend a veer block or a reach block or a toss or anything like that. They're just saying pinch B gap. Well, when you have a tackle trying to block that guy out, that's really tough because he's already pinching in there, And so I would say that's probably the biggest thing. In college, we felt a little bit, slots can't insert and cut those linebackers anymore. So that's made mid double insert a little tougher, arguably. Really good. I like the space of an odd fronts when you're running mid double to odd fronts. Love it. It gives you a little more space to an even front. Your tackle don't have to worry about, because he's getting out to an overhang or something like that and not having to worry about manhandling a big D end out, which in our conference we have a bunch. And then mid triple, it's really all about the motion, right? You got to be late and fast. And if you twirl out of your motion too quickly, it's a deal where you're giving some eye indicators to the defense, right? And so then you have to, manipulate them in the passing game. Sometimes in the passing game, you do want to rock out of that mid twirl early because make them think mid triple and then you throw it over the top, but that's it, and then getting your quarterback, you just got to really, whoever your quarterback coach is really repping that, that mid triple that happens so fast because that handoff key pitch key are right on top of each other, and so that's the hard part. But man, what we have found, if you can get a defense, if you can get that ball pitched on the perimeter, man, midline, it's really tough. It's really tough to defend for other teams. And if you can run a little bit at the slot position, it makes it real hard. And you're making those inside backers have to tackle the ball on the perimeter, which then obviously allows for some, inside run game.
Yeah, no, perfect. Like I said, that was always like the year I was part of a triple. That's the play I enjoyed.
Yeah. It's awesome, Yeah. And people are doing that stuff from the gun too. It's good stuff. That's the thing. I think, I don't know if below the waist stuff has affected football as much as people lead on, other than like those mid double when your slots are inserting on inside backers. Man, it was so fun to watch. Watch those guys go get some. Because those linebackers, it did slow those linebackers down a little bit more. I will say that for sure.
Yeah, you ran for 3,000 yards this year. Had a good first year. Is there? And we kind of talked about changes, but how are you? I mean, is anything what, and I'm just curious, after going through it for a year, like every year you're looking to improve stuff. Is there, and after doing a full year at the school, is there anything you're looking to change or install wise or drill wise to improve? Are you reaching out to anybody for ideas, suggestions? Like there's always change. And obviously like the changes with what you can do below the waist has affected a little bit of the scheme, like not much. I mean, like I said, I think to your point, it's been overly exaggerated on how much the blocking below the waist has hurt you. Flexible teams. I mean, yes, it hurts the midline stuff a little bit, but doesn't really affect truly inside and outside veer a whole lot. If you're one of those triple teams that run a lot of belly, it doesn't affect belly, doesn't affect your play action passing game. So is there any, like, as you're reviewing last year, or I'll say it this way, is there something that a wrinkle or something that you want to run more, or just in general as you kind of finish your evaluation from last year?
Yeah, it's good stuff. Well, that's right. That's the mark of good teams, right? Good coaching staffs, right? Is end of season evaluation. And what we do is we find any play that didn't go for 4 yards or more, and what was the breakdown? And so then the question becomes, was it a technique issue? Which honestly, I'm the O-line coach, right? And I love my guys. We had a kid end up being an honorable mention All-American this year, and he didn't even get to play the year before. So if you want to, I think that's a pretty interesting deal for an undersized O-lineman who became an honorable mention All-American, and he was a rotator or barely played for the previous staff. So anyway, so So then it becomes down to an evaluation. You evaluate what didn't go +4, and was it a scheme issue? Was it a bad play call, or like maybe not the best play to a first front, or was it a technique issue? And so that's what we do. And like any coach, what happens is it's always tempting to find hey, well, man, this is just so hard. This is this play or whatever, but generally it's, a tackle missed a whiffed, like, hey, you fell on your face and you didn't block this guy or something. It's always that's what we tend to find is it's generally technique issues, which cause plays to fail as opposed to needing to add plays. So then what we do is find, okay, when you have a cluster of, hey, we had a whole lot of, missteps of the right tackle position, that's what hurt us. Well, then we know when we get to do group work in the spring, that's what we're really going to harp on is footwork for these old linemen. Maybe it's pad level, or maybe it's, up and over steps so that we're not turned so much, which allows defensive ends to penetrate, whatever it's going to be. That's what we focus on. And that's where we've seen our biggest improvements from over the years, because you do build on, our kids are tough here. They play extremely hard. They have a high desire to succeed and win. But sometimes the limiting factor is the technique, and that becomes pointing at yourself as a coach. So we just don't accept kid blaming. I mean, I've always been that way for a lot of different reasons, but it's never, we say, even if it is the kid's fault, right? Sometimes it is, but we always say, look, it's never the kid's fault. This is a bad coaching issue. So if I have all these issues that have prevented plays from being great plays, how can I fix that as a coach? And then it allows position coaches to go out and address those fundamental issues. And so, man, when you do that, you just get better, and as crazy as that sounds. And so it's not really a scheme thing. What we do as a scheme is we say, hey, we do like this player. Maybe we're going to be more of an inside veer team because of XYZ this year, where maybe this year we like jet sweep as opposed to rocket toss, or, hey, our receivers have some speed, but maybe they're not, maybe they're not good underneath route guy. I don't know, pick your, whatever the thing is. But then we always are trying to adjust our scheme to fit our best players. And so when you do that, so when you own it as a coaching staff and say, hey, I'm going to coach the details and I'm going to fix the fundamental issues, and then you build your scheme around the strengths of your players, man, what we found is you really don't need that many schemes. You just need to get really good at what you do.
Okay. Well, I think that's a perfect way to end it, Coach. So coaches, make sure you obviously follow Coach on Twitter and follow their program. If you got any kids, obviously send them his way. Like, share, subscribe, check out our sponsor, Coachpad, all that lovely jazz. Otherwise, that is another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast.